Stop scrolling. I need 18 minutes of your undivided attention. Because what I'm about to show you isn't just about a bridge sitting empty over the Detroit River. It's about a $6.4 billion infrastructure project that's become a hostage in a game most people don't even know is being played. And the players? A former president demanding ownership of something his country never paid for. A billionaire family with a 95-year monopoly. And a former central banker who just became Prime Minister of Canada, standing at the edge of the biggest trade war North America has seen in a generation. If you think this is just another political squabble, you've already missed the story. Stay with me, because by the time we're done here, you're going to see this completely differently. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit that button, turn on notifications, because this situation is evolving daily, and I'm tracking every single development. The mainstream outlets are covering pieces of this. I'm connecting all of them. You don't want to miss what's coming. Let's establish the facts on the ground. The Gordie Howe International Bridge, named after a hockey legend, built over 6 years, 6.4 billion Canadian dollars. That's roughly 4.5 billion US dollars at current exchange rates. Construction started in 2018 under the Trudeau government, and what they built is genuinely impressive. The longest cable-stayed bridge in North America, 853 meters of main span. That's not just a random number, that makes it longer than any comparable bridge from Alaska to Mexico. 6 traffic lanes, dedicated pedestrian and cycling paths. But here's the engineering detail that matters most. Direct highway-to-highway connectivity. Interstate 75 on the American side flows straight into Highway 401 on the Canadian side. No stoplights, no surface streets, no downtown Windsor traffic. This is what transportation engineers call grade-separated infrastructure. It means a truck carrying auto parts from a factory in Ontario can reach the Michigan border and never touch a brake pedal until it hits customs. Now here's the part that's at the center of everything that's about to unfold. Canada paid for every single dollar of this project. Not 50-50, not a joint development fund, not a public-private partnership split between two countries. 100% Canadian financing. The structure was straightforward and it was documented in the 2012 agreement. Canada builds it. Canada operates it. Canada collects tolls until construction costs are recovered, estimated at 30 to 40 years. After that, profit sharing with Michigan begins. Clean Lego. Documented in international agreements signed by both governments. As of May 2026, the bridge is 98% complete. The towers are up, the cables are strung. The road surface is paved. The toll systems are installed. The lighting works. You can see it from both sides of the river at night, lit up like a monument to infrastructure investment. And it sits empty. 0 cars, 0 trucks, 0 revenue. Now let me show you exactly when this became a crisis. February 10th, 2026, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Donald Trump opens Truth Social and posts the following, and I want you to hear every word exactly as he wrote it. I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them. And also importantly, Canada treats the United States with the fairness and respect that we deserve. He then added this line, and this is where it goes from tariff pressure to territorial demand. The United States should own, and I quote, perhaps at least 1/2 of this asset. Let me translate that into the simplest possible language. A sitting American president just demanded co-ownership of an infrastructure project that his country did not fund, did not design, and did not build. He's demanding equity in an asset that cost Canada $6.4 billion and the United States exactly 0. The response from Ottawa came within hours. At that point, Justin Trudeau was still Prime Minister. His office released a carefully worded statement emphasizing Canada's full financing of the project and the legal agreements already in place. The tone was diplomatic. The position was unmoved. Then, March 2026, the Canadian political landscape shifted completely. Trudeau called an election. Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, ran on economic competence and won. By April, he was Prime Minister. And when Trump repeated his demand, Carney's response was different. Measured, but firm. He called the conversation with Trump positive. He emphasized collaboration. But on ownership, he didn't move a millimeter. Not 1 inch of that bridge was on the negotiating table. 2 leaders, 1 bridge, 0 resolution. And that's just the surface. Now here's where everything changes. Because I need you to set aside what I just told you about the diplomatic standoff for a moment. And I need you to look at a completely different set of facts. Facts that existed before Trump's Truth Social post. Facts that the mainstream coverage mentioned briefly and then moved past far too quickly. Because there's another bridge in this story. And there's a family that's been making money from it for nearly a century. The Ambassador Bridge, built in 1929. 4 lanes, Privately owned, and for 95 years, it has been the dominant commercial crossing between Detroit and Windsor. The family that owns it? The Moran family of Detroit. Specifically, it's now controlled by Matthew Moran after his father, Manuel, died in 2020. Here's what you need to understand about the business model. The Ambassador Bridge carries approximately 25% of all trade between the United States and Canada. That's roughly $150 billion worth of goods crossing every single year. The bridge is a private company. It charges tolls. Those tolls go to the Moran family. Now, what happens when the Gordie Howe Bridge opens? That $150 billion in trade gets a choice. Keep using the 95-year-old 4-lane bridge with frequent backups and slower processing, or use the brand new 6-lane bridge with modern customs facilities and direct highway access. Transportation economists I've read estimates from predict the Gordie Howe could capture 60 to 70% of commercial traffic within the first 2 years of operation. That's not a minor competitive threat. That's an existential revenue crisis for the Ambassador Bridge. So let me show you what the Moran family did in the lead up to this moment. And I want to be extremely precise here because precision is everything when you're following money. According to campaign finance records reported by the Detroit Free Press and Crane's Detroit Business, the Moran family and the Detroit International Bridge Company donated more than $65,000 to Donald Trump's re-election campaign and the Republican Party's Trump Victory Fundraising Committee between 2019 and 2020. That's documented. That's public record. You can verify it. But here's where it gets more interesting. In the second half of 2025, just months before Trump's February 10th post, the Detroit International Bridge Company spent $250,000 on lobbying in Washington, D.C. The purpose of that lobbying, filed in mandatory public disclosure forms, was listed as issues related to construction and operation of international bridges. $250,000. 6 months before Trump threatened to block the opening. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about something, and I need you to hear this carefully because I will not misrepresent what I can and cannot prove. I am not telling you that Donald Trump made his February 10th post because the Moran family told him to. I have no evidence of a direct conversation. I cannot prove causation. Nobody can without access to private communications. What I am telling you is this: these facts exist in the public record simultaneously. A family stands to lose hundreds of millions in toll revenue. That family donated to Trump's campaign. That family spent $250,000 lobbying on bridge-related issues in the 6 months before Trump made his demand. And Trump's demand, if successful, would either delay or kill the bridge that threatens their monopoly. I'm going to let you decide what to do with that information. But there's something else. Something that makes this even harder to explain as simple trade negotiation tactics. Go back to 2017, first Trump term. February 13th, 2017. Donald Trump sits down with then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They sign a joint statement. And in that statement, the Gordie Howe International Bridge is specifically mentioned and described as, these are the exact words from that document, a vital economic link between our two countries. 2017, Trump calls it vital. 2026, Trump says he won't allow it to open. Same bridge, same president. Completely opposite positions. So I'll ask you the question that nobody in the mainstream coverage is asking loudly enough. What changed between 2017 and 2026? The bridge didn't change. The financing structure didn't change. The international agreement didn't change. The strategic importance to North American supply chains didn't change. What changed? I don't have a definitive answer, but I'll tell you what the timeline shows. In 2017, the Gordie Howe Bridge was a concept. In 2026, it's a physical structure about to take revenue from a company that donated to Trump and spent hundreds of thousands lobbying his administration. That's what the timeline shows. And then there's a voice that surprised everyone. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens. This is the mayor of the Canadian city where the bridge physically begins. The city that's been waiting for this economic catalyst for over a decade. The city that promised businesses and residents that this bridge would bring jobs, tourism, and economic growth. You'd expect him to be diplomatic? Careful. Eager to find compromise just to get the bridge open. Instead, he said this, and I want you to hear it exactly as he said it. We have fulfilled our end of the bargain, and now to weaponize this and to hold this bridge hostage is just a crying shame. And then he said 3 words nobody expected: keep it closed. He would rather keep the bridge closed than watch Canada accept a bad trade deal just to get it opened. Think about that. A mayor whose city has been economically struggling, who has been promising his constituents that this bridge would change their future, is willing to keep it shut rather than compromise on sovereignty. That tells you everything about where the real pressure is being applied. This isn't about engineering timelines anymore. This is about who blinks first. And we still haven't gotten to the deepest layer of this story, because I went through the CBC reporting, the Washington Post analysis, the CNN breakdowns, the coverage from Reuters, the Globe and Mail, the Detroit News. Every single one of them covered pieces of what I'm about to show you. But nobody, and I mean nobody, put all three layers together in the same analysis at the same time. That's what we're doing right now. Layer 1, the legal foundation of Trump's claim. When Trump posted on Truth Social, he made a specific factual assertion. He said Canada built the bridge with virtually no United States content. He pointed to a waiver issued by President Barack Obama in 2013 that allowed the project to bypass the Buy American Act. The Buy American Act requires federally funded projects to use American-made materials. Obama's waiver was real. It's documented. It allowed the Gordie Howe project to proceed without that requirement. But here's where Trump's conclusion gets disputed. He claimed that waiver meant zero American content was used. Mark Carney immediately pushed back, stating that American steel and American workers were part of the construction. Windsor Mayor Dilkin said parts of Trump's claim were factually incorrect. CNN's analysis put it carefully. Trump's statement represented either sophisticated negotiation tactics, a genuine misunderstanding of the project details, or possibly both. I'm not here to referee who's right on the material content question. What I'm telling you is this. A presidential ultimatum with real geopolitical consequences was built on factual claims that were immediately and publicly disputed by officials closest to the project. That matters, because it tells you whether this was a carefully researched legal position or whether the justification was constructed after the decision was already made. Layer 2. Who actually has the power here? Here's what almost nobody is discussing. Trump's threat has been framed as United States versus Canada. That framing is incomplete. And the incomplete framing hides something critical. The Gordie Howe International Bridge isn't just a Canadian project that happens to touch American soil. It's overseen by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, a Crown corporation, yes, but one developed in partnership with the state of Michigan. The U.S. port of entry on the Detroit side is American infrastructure. U.S. Customs and Border Protection has to staff it, operate it, and approve its opening. So for Trump to block this bridge, he has to act against the expressed interest of his own state government. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, called the bridge a huge economic benefit for the state. But here's the part that's fascinating. Michigan Republicans agree with her. Senator Alyssa Slotkin said that once open, cargo could move from Montreal to Miami without stopping at a single traffic light. Michigan's business community is overwhelmingly in favor. Detroit's Chamber of Commerce has been advocating for this bridge for 20 years. So what you actually have here isn't simply Canada versus America. What you have is the federal executive branch threatening to block an infrastructure project that a significant portion of the American political establishment at the state level actively wants opened. This is an internal American conflict being projected outward as a bilateral dispute. And that fundamentally changes Trump's actual leverage. He's not speaking with one unified American voice. He's speaking against voices inside his own country. Layer 3. When the story changed. For months, Canadian officials maintained that the delay in opening was purely technical. Systems testing, commissioning, customs integration, standard procedure for complex infrastructure. That was the official line, and it was defensible because those requirements are real. But on May 15th, 2026, 6 days ago from when I'm recording this, CBC News published an interview with Canadian Federal Minister Evan Solomon. And Solomon said something that changed the entire framing. He said the bridge opening is part of complicated negotiations between Canada and the United States. He said Canada is deeply engaged on a daily basis with the United States on all issues regarding trade, the Section 232s, the tariffs, and including the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge. Read that list again. Trade, Section 232 national security tariffs, tariffs broadly, and the bridge. The bridge is now explicitly listed alongside the biggest structural trade disputes between two of the world's largest trading partners. I read that statement 3 times when it came out, and each time the same realization hit me. The technical delay was always real. But somewhere between February 10th and May 15th, the bridge stopped being just infrastructure waiting on final testing. It became a variable in a much larger equation. I don't know, and nobody outside those closed-door conversations knows exactly how much of the delay is technical and how much is now geopolitical. What I know is that a senior cabinet minister told the national broadcaster on May 15th that the bridge and trade negotiations are being discussed together at the highest levels daily. That's not speculation. That's on the record. Now let me bring this down to earth, because everything I've just shown you, the lobbying money, the legal arguments, the diplomatic language, it can start to feel abstract, like something happening in government offices that has nothing to do with your life. So let me show you exactly what's at stake on the ground right now. The Windsor-Detroit corridor isn't a symbolic trade route. It's functional economic anatomy. Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. The automotive supply chain that defines North American manufacturing runs through this exact point every single day. A single component might cross this border 4 or 5 times before a finished vehicle rolls off the line. And right now, every single one of those crossings is being forced through the Ambassador Bridge. A 4-lane bridge built in 1929. Never designed for this volume. Never designed for modern truck dimensions. Think about what that means in practical terms. Longer wait times, higher fuel costs for trucks idling at the border, tighter delivery windows that get missed, logistics companies absorbing costs that eventually get passed down the chain, and the end of that chain is usually a consumer. I'm not telling you that the Gordie Howe Bridge being closed is the reason your car costs more or your grocery bill looks the way it does. That would be an overstatement, and I won't make it. But what I will tell you is this: inefficiency at one of the most critical trade arteries in North America is never free. It has a cost. And that cost gets distributed quietly across thousands of transactions that nobody ever traces back to a bridge. Now zoom out to Michigan specifically. This is a state that cannot afford to leave economic opportunities on the table. The auto industry has been navigating uncertainty for years. This bridge was supposed to be a certainty, a done deal. Bipartisan infrastructure that both sides supported. And now it's a bargaining chip. Here's the macro reality. Trump's February 10th post didn't come in isolation. It came alongside threats of 100% tariffs on Canadian imports, alongside disputes over Canada's EV deals with China, alongside ongoing fights over dairy, lumber, and aluminum. The bridge became the most visible, most physical symbol of a negotiation that's reshaping the economic relationship between two countries that do $600 billion in bilateral trade every year. When that relationship fractures, the effects don't stay diplomatic. They move into factories, shipping yards, and small businesses on both sides of the border that depend on predictable access. The guy driving a truck from Windsor to Detroit this morning isn't thinking about sovereignty or leverage. He's thinking about whether his load clears on time. That's where this story actually lives, and nobody's giving him a straight answer. So where does this end? I've thought about this carefully, and I want to be honest with you the way I always try to be honest. I don't know. Nobody knows. And anyone who tells you they know for certain is selling you something. What I can do is show you the 3 paths that are actually on the table right now. Path 1, the face-saving compromise. Canada accepts a broader trade framework that gives Washington enough political cover to allow the bridge to open. Maybe that's a concession on dairy. Maybe it's a commitment on defense spending. Maybe it's something on immigration enforcement at the northern border. The bridge opens. Both sides declare victory. Trump says he fought for American interests and won concessions. Carney says Canada never surrendered 1 inch of bridge ownership. And both will technically be telling the truth. This is the scenario where nobody fully explains to their own people what actually happened. Path 2, the quiet dissolution. The technical commissioning completes on its own timeline. The broader trade negotiations continue separately. And the bridge opens quietly without any formal resolution of Trump's demand because the demand was never legally enforceable in the first place, and Washington simply moves on to the next pressure point. This is the scenario where the threat dissolves not because anyone defeated it, but because it was never as solid as it sounded. Path 3, the freeze. The negotiations stall. The tariff disputes deepen. The bridge becomes genuinely frozen inside a broader trade breakdown that neither side can resolve before the end of 2026. The bridge stays lit every night. Beautiful. Empty. And the cost of that emptiness accumulates quietly in every factory, every port, every small business that was counting on that crossing. 3 paths, 3 completely different endings. And the decision about which path we're actually on will become clear in the coming weeks. Which is exactly why you need to be here when it does. Subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Because when this bridge opens, or doesn't open, I will be the first to tell you what it actually means. Not just what happened, but why it happened, who won, who lost, and what comes next for the entire North American economic relationship. The mainstream outlets will give you the press release. I'll give you what's actually going on. Don't be the last person in the room who understands what just happened. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.